Vumane, who was responsible for the middle block, which is investigation of the police. He recommended that. And the third person that signed was the head of the DPCI, the national head of the Directorate of Crime Investigation. At the time, the Lieutenant General Sibiya, who was in that position, had signed and recommended the same. And we then had to get from the corporate side, where the budget was sourced from, a Deputy National Commissioner was responsible for the asset and legal service, where we needed this resource from General Vuma, Lieutenant General Vuma, and signed also the recommendation of this, which means all the deputies that have different roles in terms of supporting the team signed this application, and it was then approved.
Watch the video of Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi speaking at the Madlanga Commission. Calm, composed, but carrying a tone that made it very clear that things inside the South African Police Service are not as clean as some would want us to believe. The revelations he laid out are now being chewed over by the country, because this is not only about policing, it is about trust, money, and power. So, let's dive into it. The focus here is the Elite Political Killings Task Team, an initiative that was supposed to be one of the crown jewels of SAPS. It was created with the goal of dealing with political violence, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, where assassinations have become almost as regular as load shedding. Mkhwanazi's testimony reminded the Commission that this task team did not just appear out of thin air. It was approved, budgeted, and signed off by senior police leaders. Among those who gave the green light was none other than Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya. Now, at first glance, you might think this is just another layer of bureaucracy. A team is formed, a budget is signed, and off they go. But the Commission heard that millions of rand were poured into this operation, and instead of becoming a model for fighting organized violence, it has now become central to what many are calling the SAPS debacle. What does that mean? Well, imagine giving someone a brand new Ferrari to fight crime, and instead of racing down the road to catch the crooks, they crash it into the nearest lamppost. That is the kind of frustration South Africans are feeling right now. The Madlanga Commission has been pulling back the curtain on how decisions were made, who approved them, and most importantly, whether those millions were used responsibly. Because in a country where every cent is being squeezed, where schools are struggling, hospitals are short of basic equipment, and communities often go without electricity or water, hearing that millions were splashed on a task team that has little to show for it is enough to drive anyone mad. Mkhwanazi listed names. This is the part that really shook the room. No vague references, no hiding behind technical jargon. Names of police generals and senior officers who signed off on the budgets and on the very existence of this task team were put on the record. It was not just about pointing fingers, but about saying, you approved this. You knew about it. You carry the responsibility. Sibiya's inclusion in the list is particularly interesting. He has always been a controversial figure, having been both praised and criticized for his tough style in previous positions. His presence on that approval list gives this whole saga an added layer of political drama. It is not only about money mismanaged, but about the credibility of those at the top of the police hierarchy. Let's pause for a second here. South Africans are not strangers to commissions of inquiry. We have had them for state capture, for marijuana, for all sorts of scandals. The question that always comes up is, do they change anything? People remember the Zondo Commission in vivid detail, where names were read out day after day, and still ask themselves what has truly shifted in the political and economic landscape since then. Will the Madlanga Commission end up the same way, or will it finally push SAPS into a reform that is desperately needed? Because here's the reality. Political killings are not some distant issue that only affect politicians. They ripple through communities. They create fear, silence activists, and block service delivery. If you know that standing up for your ward might get you gunned down outside your home, you keep quiet. And when people keep quiet, corruption thrives. So, the money poured into this task team was not just about creating another police unit. It was supposed to be an investment in democracy itself. And that is why the revelation that millions were burned with so little accountability hit so hard. Humor aside, it almost feels like we are in one of those crime dramas where the detectives are supposed to catch the villains but end up being investigated themselves. You can almost picture the opening scene, flashing blue lights, a big SAPS logo, and then the headline, Task Force Under Investigation for Overspending. Not quite CSI, Miami. More like CSI, Pretoria. But behind the humor lies a serious reality. South Africans want to know how money is being used. They want to know whether the leadership of SAPS is genuinely interested in tackling crime or simply signing off on budgets without asking hard questions. And the Commission is now becoming the place where those uncomfortable questions cannot be avoided. Mkhwanazi's calm listing of names also signals something else: accountability might finally be creeping in. For too long, failures within the police service have been treated as faceless mistakes, with no individual taking the fall. This time, names are on record. And once they are on record, they cannot easily be erased. Will there be consequences? That remains to be seen. If history is anything to go by, South Africans may be preparing themselves for a lot of talk, a lot of outrage, and very little action. But there is also a growing mood in the country that tolerance for waste and failure is wearing thin. Communities are fed up with crime, fed up with corruption, and fed up with being told to wait for solutions that never arrive. This hearing at the Madlanga Commission is just one chapter in a much bigger story about policing, politics, and money in South Africa. But it is a chapter that matters, because it forces us to look at the structure of accountability. If the people who approve budgets for elite units are not held to account when things go wrong, then what hope is there for reform? To wrap this up, what Mkhwanazi revealed is more than a scandal. It is a mirror, reflecting the culture of decision-making inside SAPS. A culture where millions can be spent, where lives are on the line, but where accountability has been optional. South Africans will now be watching very closely to see whether this mirror becomes a window into change, or whether it is quietly packed away like so many before it. That is the story for today, and it is one worth following closely. If you have thoughts on whether this commission will bring real change or whether it is just another talk shop, share them in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you do not miss the next update. See you next time.